Hallelujah. Let Lord Jesus Christ shine forth. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us. Welcome to another live stream with DCCI Ministries. And I have the privilege of having Robert Spencer with me. Peace of Christ be with you, Robert. How are you?
And with your spirit, Hatun, thank you. Very good to see you.
You've been good? You are okay?
Yeah, on the road, very tired, but back now, so all is well.
I'm sorry that you are tired. I hope I won't make you extra tired.
It's good to travel to get the word out, get the truth out. It's very, very rare thing, the truth these days.
Yeah, and one of the things I picked up today is regarding the truth that life of Israelis are not meta at all. Hamas is just standing up for the freedom, all that.
Yes, it's been a remarkable year, really. The jihadis murdered 1,200 people, and in the year following that, they've been celebrated as heroes and championed everywhere, and those who fight against them have been demonized and marginalized in unimaginable ways that would have been unimaginable just over a year ago.
So I was in Texas last year, 7th of October. I got a message from a brother was telling me Israel is under attack, and then I turned on internet. I was in a conference in a hotel room, and I have seen pictures. First pictures were like young people are simply running, and there is like guns behind them. I was trying to figure out what's happening. I think until that time I think also I brought up as like, oh, like Palestine, free Palestine, Palestine is under the persecution, it is being suffering, all that. But that day, as I've seen the images of girls are being raped, elderlies are being murdered, and without any shame, the individuals who are doing this, recording this and putting them all over social media. I think that was the first time I start questioning where I stand when it comes to Israel and Palestine conflict. And today, I think Hamas doesn't have any place in this world. So it is in that stage. It's very bad. And I'll put a clip on first. I've got this clip to remind us what is the result of what happened since last year. So this is 42nd minutes of clip. This is the hostages still held by Hamas. Their 101 human beings are held by Hamas, and their pictures are in Jerusalem wall. It's been 365 days. Today is 366 days. And Hamas is occupying life of kids, life of men and women simply because they are Jew. Not very good. Not very good.
Indeed. Well, of course, the Quran says in chapter 5, verse 82, that the Jews are the most vehement in hostility toward the Muslims, which, when Muslims read it, makes people think that, makes them think, or many of them, that they should be vehement in hostility toward the Jews. And so they think that the Jews are evil and are their enemies before they might even meet any, because the Quran says so.
So you are pointing out actually what is happening over there. It is something to do with Islam.
It has everything to do with Islam. As a matter of fact, Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Houthis, everybody who has spoken about this conflict on the side of the Palestinian Arabs says it's all about Islam. The only people who don't know it's all about Islam are the political leaders and the media in the Western world.
So how come that side understands this is something Islamic act, yet my politicians, your politicians, people in my land, people in your land think this has nothing to do with Islam. This is simply responding or trying to take their land back, apparently.
Yes. Well, this goes back to many years ago to the Camp David Accords between the U.S. President Jimmy Carter, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, and the President of Egypt Anwar Sadat. And Carter, who was a Christian but very naive, he thought that he could bring the two sides together and they would achieve an understanding that would lead to a lasting peace. And that was based on fundamental false assumptions about the conflict. Carter had tremendous admiration, not only for Anwar Sadat, but for the Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Carter, who was very devout in his observance of Christianity, thought that Khomeini, as a devout Muslim, was a kindred spirit. And he didn't know anything about Islam. He didn't have any interest in knowing anything about Islam. And anybody who told him that Islam actually taught warfare against unbelievers, hatred for unbelievers, the subjugation of unbelievers, he wouldn't have called them Islamophobic because the word Islamophobia had not been invented yet in the 1970s. But he certainly would have just waved it away. He would have dismissed the idea out of hand. And he would instead have insisted that this was just a marginal, hijacked, twisted version of the true peaceful Islam. And that's the fundamental assumption that virtually every political leader in the West has. And so when they see what happened on October 7th, they think, well, we have to give the Palestinians what they want so that they won't do this sort of thing. It's because they don't have sovereignty. It's because they don't have land. So we give them sovereignty and we give them more land, and then everything will be all right. And they don't understand the Islamic jihad imperative, which is very simply stated in the Quran: drive them out from where they drove you out. The Israelis did not actually drive the Arabs out. They left at the behest of the Arab Higher Committee in 1948. But that's the myth, that the Israelis drove them out. And so there's the divine command of Allah that they have to drive the Israelis out. And there's no half measures in that. There's no negotiating. There's no signing away a command of Allah. And so the war against Israel will continue until Israel is obliterated. The only thing the Israelis can do in the face of it is to be strong, to understand what they're up against, and do their best to oppose and resist it. But the idea that this can be settled is based on wishful thinking and false assumptions about Islam, which our Western leaders, they don't even have any idea that Islam has anything to do with this. They think it's just this land dispute that one day somebody will hit upon the solution that's good for everyone.
So I have watched quite good amount of videos which Hamas leaders were interviewed since 7th of October, and they expressed if they have chance again, they will do it again and again. They kind of put together their reasoning. Their reason has nothing to do with the land or at all. They just wanted to get rid of the Jews. Unless I missed something. So are our politicians are not aware of their statement, or they're just like stupid idiots?
They ignore those statements. They think those statements are just designed to rally their supporters. They think that they just are trying to stir up their people to fight. And they think of it really as just meaningless political verbiage that doesn't have anything to do with real life. They think that underneath it all, they will be willing to come to some agreement. This is a malady that has afflicted the West for many decades. you can recall that Adolf Hitler preached against the Jews and was viciously anti-Semitic from the beginning of his political career, and made no secret of his determination to eradicate the Jews of Europe. And yet the leaders of Europe, and if you read newspapers of the time, the newspapers also, they tended to dismiss those statements of Hitler, and they said that's just raw meat for the masses. That's just hysterical rhetoric to get people stirred up to vote for him. But really, he's a reasonable man, and he'll come to the negotiating table and sit down with us, and we'll make an agreement. And Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of the UK, he did that and gave away Czechoslovakia to Hitler, hoping that it would bring peace, not really realizing that Hitler had made quite clear that he wasn't going to stop with Czechoslovakia, and he didn't. And so the whole thing showed up the West for its wishful thinking, and yet now the West is doing exactly the same thing again.
I remember reading articles saying never again, but that never again kind of seems never worked. I'll put a short clip on here where Hamas expresses what is their problem.
والله لو أخرجنا اليهود من فلسطين، لو أخرجناهم من فلسطين وأخرجناهم من بيت المقدس دون أن يسلموا ولو ذهبوا آخر العالم، سنلاحقهم وسندعوهم إلى الإسلام، وندعو بوجه الإسلام، وندعو جميع النصارى للإسلام. نعم ديننا دين الرحمة.
نعم، أنا أوصي أولا يعني الإخوة المجاهدين في سرايا القدس أن يستمروا في عملهم المقاوم.
نحن لا نحب الحياة، نحن طلقنا الدنيا بالثلاثة، نحن الذين عمروا آخرتهم.
I am assuming you've seen this video before.
Yeah, pardon me for laughing. It's a very serious thing, really, but that part where he says, because this is the only religion of compassion, we're going to kill everybody. That doesn't even make him stop for a second. He doesn't even realize. But this is, of course, just traditional Islam, classic Islam, that, for example, the Quran in chapter 8, verse 39 says, fight them until persecution is no more and religion is all for Allah. Then there's the famous hadith, Sahih Muslim 29:22, where Muhammad says that at the end time, the last day will not come until Muslims kill Jews, and the Jews hide behind trees, and the trees cry out to the Muslims, "Oh Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." So for them to say they're going to kill the Jews, that's just what they think Allah wants them to do. And then the Christians follow after that because they have this imperative to fight until religion is all for Allah. So if you're minding your own business and not bothering anybody, but your religion is not for Allah, they still have to fight you.
Yeah. And he is making a point that we will come after. Sorry, there is echo is coming. I'm not sure if it's from my side. He's making a point that he will. It's okay. He's making a point that after they done with the last Jew, they will come after Christians. It is religion. It is religion matter. And he expressed in his finishing point, we divorced ourselves from the worldly life. We love, we want to die.
That's right from the Quran. If the Jews say we are the beloved of Allah, let them love death if they are telling the truth. And so the idea of loving death is all connected in the Quran to loving Allah. Whereas we love life because we know we worship the creator, the author of life. And they don't. They worship someone else who's this is the author of death. And Steve Mashni is right. This is something you see in graffiti on the walls in the in Gaza and elsewhere. First the Saturday people and then the Sunday people, because they love death and they want to bring it upon us.
So I was talking with someone. It was expressed that everything actually started not 7th October 2023, but all started 7th October 1948. You earlier mentioned that uh, there is this kind of silly truth. There is this false information circulating around that Jews kind of kicked out Muslims from their land, their homes, and then they took over their land. Can you kind of expand on that? Actually, um, does history starts 1948, or does this start in 1948, or it started in 7th October when Hamas decided they are gonna break the ceasefire?
Well, in the first place, the ceasefire that was in place on October 7th, 2023 had already been broken by Hamas numerous times, as many other ceasefires had been before that. And they never were worth anything any more than their pattern was worth anything. All of the ceasefires are based on the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in the Islamic traditions about Muhammad is a treaty he made with the Quraysh when he was weak and they were strong. And then when he felt stronger and thought that he could defeat them, then he broke the treaty. And so they feel free to break these treaties. But you go back to 1948, and in 1948, of course, the modern state of Israel was founded. But the Arabs were offered a state at the same time by the United Nations, and they rejected it. And now people say, you know, the Biden administration says, and many other people all over the world say, we have to have the two-state solution. And if we give a state, and the United Nations just gave the state of Palestine a seat in the UN General Assembly, because the idea is that a Palestinian state will solve everything. Well, if a Palestinian state would solve everything, why did they reject it in 1947? Why did they reject it again when the Israelis offered it to them after the 6-Day War? Why did they reject it again when it came time for the Oslo Accords, when Ehud Barak offered them a very generous deal, when Ehud Olmert offered them an even more generous deal? And yet they didn't want a state then. And now a state is going to solve everything. The idea that a Palestinian state would solve everything is based on fundamental false assumptions in regard to the nature of the conflict. And so 1948, they rejected it because they wanted to destroy Israel utterly, and they thought they would when Israel declared independence and the surrounding Arab states declared war, which of course was a jihad. And the Arab Higher Committee at that time, which had been founded by Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who lived in Berlin during World War II and worked with the National Socialists, the Nazis, to kill Jews in Europe. He also preached in Arabic to Muslims, telling them they should join up with the Germans to fight the Jews. And he founded this Arab Higher Committee, which called upon the Muslims in Palestine to leave the area because they were going to destroy Israel and they wanted them out of the line of fire. Once Israel was destroyed, they could come back. Well, Israel won the war, and so they didn't go back. And this has now been transformed into the historical myth that they were driven out by the Israelis. And it was actually only in the context of the war that any of this happened at all. And the Arabs were on the side of the Arab states that wanted to destroy Israel. And so they heeded the call of the Arab Higher Committee and they left. And then some of them, because they were recognized as being on the side of the combatants, were told that they couldn't stay either, any more than any state would allow enemy combatants to stay. So the whole thing is based on false pretenses. But even today, I even hear Christian leaders saying that, especially Christian Arabs, saying that their people tell them that they were expelled in 1948 and so on. And this is unfortunately a manifestation of the dhimmi attitude of adopting the perspectives of the dominant community, the Muslims, and identifying with them for their own self-protection. But this is not how it happened.
Have you ever come across anywhere else in history where someone starts a war with the lies, yet they become like these so professional victims? Everyone kind of feels sorry for them. Everyone wants the original victim to kind of just hand over everything and then meet with the deal, meet with the all the wishes of what this kind of Hamas is doing right now. Like, so in my mind, I'm just thinking how Hamas was stepped in and entered the land which is not belong to them, murdered, raped, kidnapped, and like still have 101 hostages in their hands, and all world is just okay. We need to meet with the wishes of Hamas, poor Palestinians, all that. Have you ever seen anywhere else in history that this kind of war starters are the ones who are becoming official victims and getting lots of supporters?
I can't think of any other example, but I think that it's the West's fault, not that of Hamas. Not that I'm exonerating Hamas in the slightest degree, but the Western world is very strange these days. It's very ill. If our forefathers were to return and see what we've become, they would be appalled. You have this idolization of victimhood that arises actually out of a misplaced sense of Christian charity, or a charity that started out as Christian and then became deformed as the West began to discard Christianity. So that what you have are people who are concerned for the poor, the weak, the downtrodden, the marginalized, the helpless, and so on. And that, you could say, arises out of the Christian impulse to care for the poor and to care for the needy and so on. But it has been twisted into making idols out of the victims, out of the needy and the poor and the weak. And that has resulted in clever, evil entities such as Hamas recognizing that these people, they love victims. And if we can portray ourselves as victims, we can get anything we want out of them. And so they play the victim no matter how preposterous it is, and it works. And the leaders of the Western world, the United Nations, the European Union, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the President of the United States, they all fall over themselves to take care of Hamas as victims, because they have this misplaced sense of what it means to be a victim and what they should do for victims and so on. And they're stupid enough to believe the victimhood mentality, even in the face of what happened a year ago today.
Yeah. What is the images you remember just for the 7th of October, the day like as it was holding? Do you remember any aggression from Israel that day? Like, have you come across any videos that day?
No, there was no aggression from Israel. It was actually the Sabbath, Shabbat, and it was a holy day in Israel, and so people were not working, and the excuse me, the jihadis struck on this day on purpose because they figured that many of the Israelis would have their guard down, and the Hamas jihadis, recognizing what Muhammad said, war is deceit, they had carefully prepared the groundwork for quite some time, trying to give the Israelis the impression that they were concerned about governing and not interested in waging jihad anymore. And the Israelis, because they don't have any greater understanding of jihad than anyone else in the Western world, unfortunately, they fell for it. And they did have their guard down to a tremendous degree, such that the jihadis from Gaza were able to breach the border and rampage for quite some time.
So only image I have in my mind is people are running from the concert, screaming. You've got pictures of only videos like Hamas is releasing, or like Hamas, for example, going to houses and then recording them, even like calling people's families and then like murdering them in front of their families, all that. Yet this is the clip from England. So 7th of October 2023 evening. So what's happening? While like Hamas is attacking Israel, murdering, kidnapping, this is what is happening in Britain. So this is in front of Israel embassy. And I'm sure you picked up there is idiot Turkish walking with the Turkish flag there as well. So it's just that day, people are already in front of Israel embassy and asking Palestine to be free, and already messed up. Just today, like it's not even like coming months or something. It's just same day while people are being murdered by Hamas. We've got the pro-Hamas supporters in the streets of London just coming alongside of the terrorists. Just my mind just doesn't get it.
And notice the printed signs. So
Yeah.
this was, they were ready for this.
Yeah, it's
They
all,
had prepared for this.
yeah, it's like, remember, so I come across, I wasn't around for a couple of months. I come across with some news after that, where it came out that some of the UN workers were there working for Hamas. Some of the American news agencies were there to just like recording as it was happening. Everyone knew about it. West
Yeah.
knew about it. Pro-Hamas supporters in London, supporters of terrorists knew about it. They already prepared the signs, and then they are ready to take the streets.
Yes. And the UN, you know, of course, the UN is run by Marxists. And the Marxists, they hate Israel because they want to enforce a collectivist equity upon everyone and make everyone the same. And so they dislike a state that is so particular, a Jewish state, the only Jewish state in the world. And they don't like the idea of these individuals who won't join the great collective. So they want to destroy Israel. The UN, it's been a big scandal since October 7th, 2023, that it's come out that many workers in the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, UNRWA it's called, they were working with Hamas, and they were Hamas agents and operatives who were working at the UN. And the UN has denied knowing about this, but that seems very unlikely. It's much more likely that they knew very well what was going on, and they were happy with it because they hate Israel, as Marxists tend to do.
It was on, I don't know if you noticed, it was on the news last week that a Yazidi girl who was taken by ISIS back in 2014 was rescued from Hamas.
It's all the same jihad, see?
10 years. Think about it, like 10 years. UN workers must know that there was a Yazidi girl in that land.
And nobody questioned it.
Yeah, no one wanted to question
10
it.
years from when she was 11 to when she was 21. And so some guy in Gaza comes back with a Yazidi wife, and she's 11 years old,
Yeah.
And then all the time when she's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, nobody says a word. When all those years that she's living there, and it's very clear, I'm sure, that she was a slave, nobody cared.
Yeah.
And the UN didn't care, and none of the people around there cared. But it
So-
shows it's all the same Islam. It's all the same jihad. The Islamic State, ISIS, people don't think of it in terms of Gaza. And they think of Hamas as a Gaza nationalist group for the Palestinians. And so the idea that this girl was trafficked, she was sold from Iraq into Gaza, that's inconceivable. It doesn't make any sense if you understand the world the way the Western intelligentsia does. But if you understand that all of the jihadis see the world the same way and consider each other brothers, then it makes sense.
I've got an idiot here. What do you think about this comment?
Well, Israel,
Yes.
I don't think Israel should be allied with Azerbaijan any more than Korsakov does. Israel is not a perfect state any more than any state is perfect. Israel is very isolated in the world, and Azerbaijan is a foe of Iran. Azerbaijan is a state that I don't think anybody should be allied with, but it's understandable that Israel would ally with a foe of Iran. It's unfortunate that it puts them against the Armenian Christians, and that's a shame. And I disagree with that. On the other hand, I'm not an Israeli government official, and so nobody asked me. I don't think that that fact changes the fact that as the Christian Armenians are threatened by jihad, so are the Israelis. And so it may be that there are things we would change about the Israeli government, but that doesn't change the jihad.
Yeah. So I'm gonna show short clip from this open prison in Gaza. Their reaction to the 7th of October. Let's see what it tells us.
الله أكبر تحية للكتاب وعلى الدين يلا الله أكبر
So this is a clip where some hostages are being brought into this open air prison. I'm sure you noticed from these huge and big buildings have like all this camping and tenting and all this like prison life is being practiced there. And how sad people of Palestine as they are seeing hostages are coming, as they are seeing these war cars are passing through. You see how sad they are.
Yeah, the whole open air prison, it's amazing to me that anybody could ever have believed that, because there's never been a prison or a concentration camp where the inmates fired rockets out into the surrounding areas. There's never been a prison or concentration camp that was as wealthy as Gaza, and it was quite wealthy, and where you would see luxury apartment buildings and markets overflowing with food, and yet people believe this propaganda, but that's all it was. It was just designed to reinforce the victimhood narrative that we were discussing before.
Let me show you another clip. I'm just going. I just spent some time to go through what are the kind of new clips out there. So this is where I don't know if you remember the news where it has been stated how Israel was attacking the hospitals, how Israel was going after the innocent. It is Israel's war is not against Hamas, all that. So here's the clip where hostages are being taken to hospitals. Of course, not to be taken care of, but to be hidden there.
الله أكبر الله أكبر تكبير تكبير
So in those cars, you've got the hostages and Hamas members or Hamas army is getting into the hospital. And you get to hear this voice screaming Allah Akbar, how they are grateful that their God is delighting in the suffering of man and woman.
Yes. And notice that, as you said, this is a hospital. They're taking these people into the hospital because they know that the Western press, if Israel moves against the hospital, will claim that Israel is menacing innocent civilians. When it's very clear, these people are Islamic jihadis. They're outside the hospital firing guns. They're driving up in military vehicles with hostages that they're going to hide in this place because they know how they can manipulate the Western press. And the Western press eagerly falls for it because they're Marxists too, and they hate Israel.
Back in 2013, 2014, when I was trying to buy these Dabuk magazine, ISIS magazines, I was surprised how ISIS was using social media to publicize what they are doing, and they were very proud of it. I think this is the second kind of Islamic attack. I'm seeing that how they are proud what they are doing, and they are the ones like who are publicizing, who are publishing it, who are putting on social media. Oh, see, we are doing something very good. Just like I find it's very disturbing.
Well, that's how the Islamic jihadis have behaved throughout history. And of course, they think what they're doing is a sacred act, a holy act. It's an act of worship that they present to Allah. It's like there's a clip from Gaza from years ago of an Islamic spokesman saying, a Hamas spokesman, as a matter of fact, saying that you have made our killing the Jews an act of worship. And so they think they're doing a wonderful thing. And I remember when I was working on my book, The History of Jihad, I found a letter from an Islamic leader to one of the crusade leaders who had not been in an area where the crusaders were defeated. And those who were captured were tortured and killed. And the jihadi wrote him a taunting letter saying, you should have been there. You would have seen all the torture and all the death and how all your people being killed. And he clearly thought it was a wonderful thing that he'd done, was bragging about it. Anyway, this question, October 7th, was a tragedy, but Israel clearly overreacted. I would wonder what RCW would recommend, for example, that the United States do if 1,200 people had been killed in a country of 9 million. If the same proportion had been killed in the United States, that would be tens of thousands of people being killed on one day by rampaging Islamic jihadis who had been vowing to destroy the country and working from south and north to do so for decades. What do you think actually should have been done? And of course, when you say they're overreacting, you've likely got in mind Hamas casualty figures, which are total lies anyway. And you should look into the studies of the British Colonel Richard Kemp and John Spencer of West Point University, the West Point College, the place where U.S. military officers are trained. And they both, independently of each other, studied Israel's actions in Gaza. And Kemp says that Israel is the most moral army in the world. And Spencer has detailed how the Israelis have been very scrupulous and more successful than any other army in history in avoiding civilian casualties, even as their foes launch attacks from civilian areas in order to draw retaliatory fire that they can use for propaganda purposes. And so where's the overreaction? You're just falling for propaganda.
If someone comes and then takes your daughter from you, would you tell them, oh, take my second daughter and then take my wife and then take me and take my property?
Yeah, I don't want to overreact.
Yeah, you don't want to overreact. So I have been in a place where I was in another country and desperately needed help of British consulate. And anyone who has been in such a situation, you would want your government to do anything to get you out. Anything for them to do, anything to take you out of the situation you are in. And 101 hostages, Hamas still holds it. Hamas occupies 101 life until today. Hamas took over 300 human beings from their own land. If that's me and my government doesn't come after me to help me, which in the past they didn't actually, but you want your government to come after you. You are paying money to them. You hire them to look after you and take care of you and uphold the law for you. And you are saying, oh, it's overreacted. Oh, they came and then murdered 1,200 people and then kidnapped 3,300 people. That wasn't enough. They murdered even the animals. Oh, it's overreacting. What do they want? Oh, let me give them all I have. That's a stupid mindset. There is no love in such a statement. Love by default protects. And if you don't want to protect your loved ones or the one whom you are responsible to, well, go and enjoy hot days with Mohammed in hell without ice cream. Seriously?
That's a very important point. That's very wise and very important, that love protects by its nature, that love looks out for the loved ones and ensures their safety, which means defending one's home and one's nation. And this is something that people have forgotten. A lot of people nowadays, we hear atheists in their apologetic against Christianity say Christianity says love your enemies, and it can't stand up to Islam, and you have to become an atheist to fight against Islam effectively. And you just actually very, very clearly explained why that's not true.
You would bring, what is the phrase for that? Like, you would go to the end of earth to protect your loved ones. I'm surprised that Israel hasn't finished Hamas yet. Reason for that is because Israel has been attacked from 7 different places, and all it's trying to do is defend itself. But it's been a whole year. Hamas is still breathing there, and that's
it's the fault of the Biden administration that stopped Israel for months from going into Rafah, and they could have finished the job quickly. But now the Hamas jihadis who were concentrated in Rafah have been able to circulate all around Gaza, and so the problem is probably worse than it was several months ago.
Didn't they have some hostages from Rafah as well? Some hostages were taken to Rafah, and they were found out in the journalist of Al Jazeera and the doctor's house. I think that was Rafa. I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
But others were able. See, the Biden administration was insisting that Israel not go into Rafah and let civilians leave, and we don't know how many Hamas jihadis were able to leave the area under the guise of being innocent civilians and then regroup elsewhere.
This is nothing personal, but your president is just idiot is kind word.
Yeah.
Your president is just like Walking Dead without no brain. Same with your vice president. Okay.
That's right. Somebody's running things, though, and the people who are running things are very evil.
Lord have mercy to those who who are on the authority and power, because right now they are abusing their authority and power. I've got another short video, approximately 5 minutes. Tell me to stop if you want me. I'll put that up to remind us some stuff.
آلاف مؤلفة ملايين كل غزة يا جماعة. طبعا اللي مروح الجندي حامله بين ايديه، اللي مروح بمستوطنة والله مستوطنات. يا هو مش ده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
And just pointed the gun really hard at my forehead, screaming at me, take it off, and punching me until I could not hold the towel anymore. And then he forced me to commit a sexual act on him.
He stripped her out of her clothes. Her boyfriend got shot in the head. And after they done what they done, they executed her.
מנתקים אותך לרצפה, אתה מנסה להתנגד, מורידים לך את הבגדים, צוחקים עליך, משפילים אותך, זורקים עליך. أنسين الخان.
حطيت حرمت على على الكاميرا واخذت هذيك نيمتها نمت معها.
بقول لك يمكن زنا اغتصاب اعتداء بتحقيق كل واحد له فكرة.
So that video was from Bright Mind, just kind of summarized on what is happening in what happened in October stuff. Just quick clarification. I said so there are hostages were rescued from Rafah, as well as in the tunnels of Rafah they find hostages that were murdered. So yes, Rafah was kind of involved with holding the hostages of Hamas. Robert Spencer, I wanted to ask you the question. There was a clip where this black man was taking Israeli girl who is being raped out of the car and then moving to the front of the car. Last time when I checked, Palestinians were not African blacks. So where are those black people entered in the army of Hamas? Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, here again, it's all about Islam. And so this was, I don't know where this man was from, but there's no doubt that he is a Muslim from probably somewhere in Africa, or maybe from America. And he went over to Gaza to join the jihad. As we have seen jihadis from all over the world join ISIS several years ago when they had their caliphate in Iraq and Syria. And before that, jihadis traveled from all over the world to join the jihad in Kosovo, in Afghanistan, various other places. And so this just underscores the fact that this is an Islamic jihad, the one thing that Western analysts seem to refuse to understand. And meanwhile, I wanted to note just one thing briefly, that they kept saying they wanted to humiliate these women when they were raping them. And this is very important, that Islam is the religion of pride. And it's interesting that humility is the hallmark of Christianity, and pride is the opposite of humility. And the idea of rape in this context, and even of murder, is to humiliate the foe and show the superiority of Islam. And it's all just a kind of demonic pride that is exalting them, is the act of their exalting themselves over these other people in order to show the superiority of Islam over Judaism and all other religions. That's why they're always yelling Allahu Akbar as they're doing it. Allah is greater.
Well, I wouldn't take pride in such an action, as well as I wouldn't even want to be friend with someone who is taking pride in such an action. You expressed that this is kind of Muslims all around the world coming under the banner of Islam to do jihad. How come we don't get to see such a thing regarding what is happening to Muslims in Yemen, what is happening to Muslim Uyghurs. I don't know how to say that name in English.
Uyghur.
Yeah, Uyghurs. So how come we don't get to see that when it comes to these people, but some, like, we get to see supporters of Hamas, for the supporters of Hamas?
Well, you know, the Uyghurs, it's interesting to note, they are very severely persecuted by the communist Chinese government.
Yeah.
And I just recently actually saw a video of a mosque in China that had been converted by the Chinese communists into a dance hall.
Nice.
And we're in there eating and drinking alcohol and dancing.
Yeah.
And the Pakistani government and the Afghan government and all the others that work with the Chinese, they didn't say a word, because they believe in strength and weakness. They see the world in terms of strength and weakness. And they understand that the Chinese are strong, and so they don't bother them, even when they're persecuting Muslims. But the West, they see as weak. And so they think that if they pressure the West, they can get what they want. And it works. It's true. So they're getting it. And the Biden administration just sent more millions to Gaza, to Hezbollah, to Lebanon. Hundreds of millions of dollars, which goes to Hezbollah. Just as when they send humanitarian aid, so-called, to Gaza, it goes to Hamas.
Doesn't look good, does it?
No, but
like, our politicians are coming alongside of terrorists, alongside of rapists, alongside of murderers.
That is absolutely true. It doesn't look good, and it will likely get worse. There are two things, though. More and more people are waking up, and also, ultimately, we know that evil does not triumph in the world, and so we can take comfort in that. How exactly it's going to work, though, when I see how we'll get from here to there, when I see how the world is today, well, that's for God to know and not me.
What are your last thoughts on these last 365 days regarding Israel or situation in Middle East? Now it's kind of expanding.
Well, the jihadis were tremendously encouraged by October 7th and emboldened everywhere. And we've seen them now marching all over in the West, and open support for Hamas and Hezbollah expressed on college campuses and in the streets. And this is, once again, this is a sign of the weakness of the West. If this had not been tolerated from the beginning, it wouldn't be happening now. But because our Western leaders are really on the side of these people, they don't lift a finger against them.
Well, as Hamas fighter expressed, as well as Hamas leaders said, they would do October 7 again and again, and Hamas fighter expressing, once they finish the last Jew, they will come after Christians. So that means once they've done with the Jews, they will come after you. They will come after your loved ones. When I say you, that includes our Prime Minister, includes President of America, everyone who is simply like kind of right now bowing down to Hamas, bowing down to them. So they will come after you. And not only they will come after you, but first they will come after your loved ones. And when that happens, please don't overreact. They let them to do whatever they want to do, your loved ones, and then do to you whatever they want to do. Just don't overreact. You don't want to be called Islamophobe by overreacting. Just give your loved ones, sacrifice your loved ones, because you are already sacrificing others' loved ones. As they say, after Saturday, it's Sunday.
That's right. That's what's coming, and the West has no idea. And probably there are even people watching this who think, well, I'm neither a Jew nor Christian, so this has nothing to do with me. Well, listen, everybody in the Western world, they think of as Christians. Whether you're an atheist or a Buddhist or a Hindu, they think of the West as Christians. So when they say they'll come after the Christians, they mean everybody in the West. So don't think you're exempt.
Yep, none of us. If we don't speak now, even though now it's too late, but still we need to make sure we speak and we act on it, so that they don't come after our loved ones as well as after us. Robert Spencer, thank you very much for joining me and helping us to look back for 365 days and see how much the world is messed up thanks to Islam and thanks to Hamas, as well as thanks to supporters of Hamas. I think I'm seeing you on Thursday again to discuss whether talk about Muhammad's biography, critical biography.
I look forward to it.
Should be fun. That will be much more kind of hopeful than this this depressed live stream. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much everyone who joined us. By God's grace, we will see you on Thursday to discuss critical biography of Muhammad. If you haven't bought it until now, just get it from Amazon and then read it and then come with your objections so we can kind of deal with them as well. By God's grace, we will see you again.